So first of all, welcome everyone in the lab. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi. And welcome to everyone who's watching to this lovely presentation today. Before starting, I would like to first say thank you to all participants that so openly accept this creative challenge. This house started 2 years ago with the intention of supporting professionals of all cultural and creative industries. This third lab talk appears in the context of a presentation of new projects that started and are being developed in this current lab, Lab 3, which selected 8 wonderful professionals from different parts of the world with work developed in diverse career fields. We have today 3 presentations, and we are going to start now with Saša and Harry. Then we will have Dalia and Louise's presentation, and finally, at the end, Jacqueline and Anja in collaboration with Sophia, where we will also end beautifully with a group exercise. So please, Saša and Harry, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Martina. Hello, my name is Saša Nemec and I'm an artist and an art producer from Slovenia, mainly working between my hometown of Nova Gorica and Helsinki, Finland. My practice spans between exploration of new technologies and the use of age-old techniques and textiles, but I will talk more about my practice during this presentation. Now I will give the word to Harry Man, my partner in crime, to do a little presentation of his own.
Hi everybody, so I'm Harry Man, and I'll very briefly say a couple of words about my practice. So my practice is sort of quite traditional in some senses. On the page is a kind of lyric poet, but I also experiment and collaborate with visual artists, with choreographers. I also get involved in community creative writing projects. I did an erasure project recently with Creative Age that was really exciting, and Middlesbrough Institute of Modern Art, where I've been artist in residence last year, and working with ecologists on endangered species, which is a collaboration with visual artists, Sophie Gainsley, and also developing poetry out of artificial intelligence. These poems on the left there, "He was real and open like a room," is built using a little AI that I made, and Insta poem written in the style of IKEA instructions. So lots of things really. Yep, and that's me. So Saša, if I hand back over to you.
Yes, thank you. So our collaborations was started because, of course, Das Haus and Martina asked us to, but then it developed in actually something quite nice. I will try to explain a bit how it went, and I hope we will not bore you too much with the technicalities, but they are in fact very, very interesting. So I will be the first to admit that I have a specific way in which I approach projects, and that way sometimes hinders those projects, and it's not in self-creative. So the thing that I imagine in the beginning is the thing that I want as an outcome, and I really leave little to no margin for error for this outcome. So in the project here presented, me and Harry, we wanted to somehow counteract the ways in which I usually operate. So at least this was the aim from my part. So me and Harry, we tried to combine our 2 already established practices with the spontaneous and the unexpected. This got us thinking of ways on how we can accomplish that, especially as we could not meet in person. So we started with searching for some tools that we could use to do an online back and forward. As we all know, in these times, it's very difficult to meet in any other way but online. So the main tools that we have found and tried to employ, or that seemed like they will fit to what we were trying to do, are A strategies, which is a card-based method for promoted creativity jointly, which was created by musician artist Brian Eno and multimedia artist Peter Schmidt, and is supposed to encourage lateral thinking. Then the second strategy that could be an option was the game of consequences, which is an old parlor game that works in a similar vein to the surrealist game of Exquisite Corpse or Mad Libs. And the final one is the one that I have already said. It's the game of Exquisite Corpse, or also Exquisite Cadaver. That's the other way how people say it, which is a method by which a collection of words or images is collectively assembled. So from those three options, we choose a mix of consequences and the Exquisite Corpse game, or they're basically games, which was also one of the things that we were trying to do, like be a bit spontaneous. So even if there are tools, there are basically all of the three things are kind of games. So we choose a mix of those two, and we chose them because they both have a writing and a visual component. This would mean that our two practices can be combined by the same tool, even if they are in two different techniques. It was not so relevant for us in which technique we would choose or we would operate, but we wanted to achieve the before mentioned element of surprise and unexpectedness. We both continued employing our own separate artistic practices, one in poetry and writing, and the other in visual representations and 3D design. As I have been using the medium of 3D rendering in the past to encapsulate my installation and performances and to somehow, let's say, digitally archive them for future reference, I attempted to do this also on a more day-to-day basis with more homely visual cues. I think that maybe from this picture it's not so literally, visible what I have meant, but this is a 3D scan of a Swiffer, of a dusting device which I had lying around my house, and that sometimes, when the light from outside hits it just right, it gets me all excited. Let's call it. So this was the first one, and the second one was a 3D render of a pillowcase or a pillow that was set on a chair. So both were kind of very unliteral in the end and very spontaneous as 3D renders, because nor I or the viewer actually know what like the former object was, but I just went with it. So in this way I could be completely systematic and truthful to my practice, but having a really unexpected outcome.
So I had kind of my own aim to answer Saša's question of how to work more spontaneously, how to sort of create a spontaneous response from within literature, ostensibly. Semic writing is one of the things that I arrived on. It's not something that I've really tried a great deal of in the past, so this is kind of new terrain for me, but exciting. Semic writing is a means to fuse visual art with literature. Any text produced should be asemic, in other words, asemantic. So words, you can bundle up grammar and syntax and spelling and legibility and just send them sailing out of the window into nowhere. It's not important. The semic writing looks almost kind of like drunk writing, and if it looks like somebody's extremely drunk writing it, that's about accurate. Haus, in the second half of the 8th century, one of the progenitors of semic writing, was himself drunk while creating extraordinary calligraphy. So semic is sort of spontaneous and abstract art is frequently compared to semic writing. Results often kind of quite alien, theosophic symbols, almost hieroglyphs that assign the reader the task of the creative interpreter, where they kind of hover between a reader and viewer. And sort of we fathom from this a kind of from the visual context of the writing what it might be. Does it look like song lyrics or a religious text, perhaps, or does it look like a joke from a Christmas cracker from another world, or a tourist guide to a capital city with elongated buildings that must be entered only from above, or instructions on the side of a fish tank with glorious creatures inside. So similarly, there's a kind of surreal element to prose poetry, which is sort of looking at how once you've removed all the traditional ideas that we associate with boring, stuffy poems of scansion that have sort of rhyme schemes, that have meter and all these other kind of features taught to identify in school, what you end up with instead is this rather fantastic sort of stream of consciousness style of writing that is immersed, which has a lot more in common with the visual fields. It's kind of thinking about writing almost like a portrait. So you're thinking about perspective and light and shadow and the things you can imagine, but also it turns the reader into a kind of psychonauts traveling through the mind of somebody else. You can see here, this is from Lucy Hamilton, my companions have transmogrified into monkeys. It's not supposed to be literal in quite the same way. This is another piece called Object, which was at the Contemporary Art Research Institute in Oxford that I made. And here it is. It gives you a sense of the prose poem. Object. Scattered, the words represent forms in their own right, and are also significant in their cumulative effect. Between them is space, airy, invisible, and blank. This is where the artist is drawing on the influence of 12th century Chinese Zen contemplation, encouraging the viewer to consider their own essential nature. According to Zen practices, the exclusion of all other thoughts is the only method of achieving pure enlightenment. From the perspective of one word to the next, the viewer can see how none of the words in the text are positioned such that they overlap. This seems to be intentional and is consistent with the artist's other works. This choice is inviting the viewer in. Through an implicit absence of anything to draw their focus, the viewer is encouraged to observe what object emerges, to consider their object, and how it is positioned and moves, how it tastes, to listen for any emissions of sound, to sense its individual scent, the texture of it along the palm, and the object's heat or coolness. No other viewer of this text, either now, in the past, or in the future, is imagining the same object. This object is not the work of the artist. It is made from the viewer's own essential nature. In this way, it is very beautiful and also fragile. The experience itself is not enlightenment, because the viewer continues to read the text, but what the viewer is picturing is a trace of it, like when awakening, that first momentary glowing imprint of light. So this piece was something that I created with a view that it would be just on its own as a plaque, just a description, placed in public. So this is what Saša sent across to me in our collaboration. So this was sort of, if you like, the head and going down to the shoulders of the strange, exquisite corpse that I need to kind of respond to. So I kind of thought about this in terms of a sort of procedure: match the shape, to look at existing words and think about accent and etymology and so on. Transfer and translate to a self-contained poetic conceit. What's the grand idea? What's the concept? What's going to be there? What's going to make it understood? And then list out the vocabulary. Sort of when writing a lyric poem, building on the tradition of people like Dylan Thomas, Elizabeth Bishop, looking at these poets who kind of used to spend a lot of time kind of listing words. Elizabeth Bishop liked to fall asleep with a slice of roquefort next to the bed. I wasn't quite sure if that I should follow suit or not. There might be complaints. Draft spontaneously and interfere with conventional literary modes. Now, part of the reason for going for sort of asemic writing is this element of it being kind of improvisatory and spontaneous. So first step is matching the shape. Serif fonts used in word processors are usually arranged on a kind of grid system. So they've got strict rules. The ascenders and descenders of letters can't stretch beyond the line. You don't get kind of wobbly text usually. So you end up with something like this. So I matched letters approximately to the shape to see what it would look like. And here we can see D, L, S, and Y. And then I put these into a crossword solver because just a fast way of looking up a word that might kind of match these properties. And it came up with defenselessness. I really kind of wanted it to be defenselessness, but of course that would be a nonsense word. So alternative glyphs offer a kind of closer visual approximation. So they're looking across the rest of the available characters. You can start to sort of build other shapes. And this is what I ended up with, something which looks like the nonsensical word offence. It looks almost like efferent, carrying away, conveying outwards. So I was quite interested by that. Efferent, you don't really hear efferents very much. Yes, it's an interesting word with a kind of riverine or river-like connotation. In addition, all the other elements of this word seem to also have kind of river-like connotations. There's a pitch or stress that suggests a kind of incline, and we've got this lessening, something which is happening as it's kind of lessening down a hill. And then this delta, and then summation, this kind of capital letter E, where it's this huge sum of everything else that's happened, sum of all its parts. So that was really interesting. Something else that's kind of hovering around in my mind is this peculiar property of all the rivers on Earth, which is that the distance from the source to the mouth of any given river divided by the travel, that is the kind of distance it goes from left to right, is on average equal to pi. So that's just a really unusual property of rivers, that they all seem to have this rather kind of beautiful sum at their heart. So then came kind of listing out a vocabulary. So this is all the kind of prep work you would really think about if you were going to start working on something that was a kind of very conventional kind of lyric poems. You might be working on, you know, like a sonnet of Villanelle, or ballads, you know, all these kind of classic forms that tend to be the sort of stock and trade of lyric poetry. All these things tend to involve kind of like writing out word lists, sort of exhaust the vocabulary and make sure that what you're talking about, you know, can push you into interesting ways. If you like, it's sort of the way in which you're sort of wetting the brush, or you're kind of creating a new kind of palette to work from. So then obviously what I want to do is reply spontaneously and sort of take this kind of photocopy of my subconscious, try and write purely straight out of the mind with no editing whatsoever. You know, first thing that hits the page is going to be the thing. So this is what I came up with. I won't read you the whole thing, let's give you kind of a sense of it. It ends up being this sort of strange interview with the river. River, who knows why you came by, bidding farewell to a billion years, balloon careless in space, once a comet seltering steam, walloping the Pacific Ocean without ceremony. So it became this kind of thing, and sort of questions of what happens if you live your life surrounded by kind of floating turds, and those sorts of questions also enter here. So it's not all this kind of rather ornate, kind of aureate, mawkish opening sentence. It does go into these other places. And then Saša sent me across the next section. So we're down to sort of the belly button of the beast, of the exquisite corpse. So I now have to sort of think about how I'm going to join this together. And for that, I looked at the International Phonetic Alphabet, which again is kind of basing itself within a kind of Latin system of characters. So that's kind of lexicographic as opposed to logographic, and thinking about you know, what would be really kind of mutually understandable across a lot of kind of different languages, and really the International Phonetic Alphabet is that. So even if what you're reading is complete gibberish, technically speaking, you should be able to sort of conjure up the sounds, river by what intolerable brightness it starts. So, and you can see that the translator for the International Phonetic Alphabet is given up on the word counterpunctual because it can't identify. Yeah, so that's what it ended up with. I had no idea that there was a Swifter involved and a cushion. These objects kind of generated what the response was, but I really think it's such a nice mixture. This idea of kind of light seems to have kind of penetrated both works in a really fascinating way. So I think it's been incredibly exciting and such a privilege to work with Saša. I'll hand back to you now.
So yes, this is the latest that Harry was showing. And after that, I convinced somebody else to put all of our 4 pieces together, so we would also be surprised by the outcome. The outcome was sealed in this little email that I got sent. And when I opened it, this was the outcome. So basically, the artwork is mixed with both words and 3D graphics, let's say. And well, this is it. I think that I need, or that I need a better curator or a person that would analyze this, as I think that we have both achieved like our goal to be spontaneous with it, because we did not know what will happen and what will be the outcome. But this outcome has a really nice title, and the title is "We Throw Our Voice Around the Room and You Catch It." Thank you everyone for listening to this presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Harry and Sasha. Now we are going to listen to Dalia and Louis' presentation. Go ahead, please.
My name is Loise Braganza, and I am currently based in Bombay, India. I come from a background of clothing and costume design. Presently, my work has moved forward from a purist position of costume designer to an interdisciplinary approach practice of art making by taking the form of performance with clothes or and concepts birthing out of costume, but diversifying to more sociocultural matters. My work involves concepts building from matters related to the personal, materiality moving from the body and without the body, now spreading out into the digital. In my career, I highlight this transition using Point of Departure project, Voice of the Embroiderer. You can find this on my website. It was a project that included research into the identity of a group of embroiderers involving participative and collaborative engagement into the study of craft. It brought about 8 embroidery works of high technical expertise created by the embroiderers, and it was accompanied by a video essay and a catalogue, The Labourer's Craft, discussing the works that was displayed in the exhibition. And now I hand it over to you, Dalia.
Hi, my name is Dalia Castel. I'm a filmmaker and I'm Israeli but based in Berlin. I come from documentary background as a documentary director and editor, but in the last few years, I'm moved more to other directions, and I'm doing more experiments with animation, and I'm also a VJ.
So Dalia and I decided to do an exchange of message and response that we could do over the course of 3 weeks after our first Jitsu meeting, of talking about how we could collaborate together and what we would like to do broadly from our interests. So our timeline was 3 weeks to make this happen, and therefore we decided that we would begin this dialogue on WhatsApp as a conversation that we could record and document and also make viable online. We spoke of the internet, what we were reading, and how we could use digital media. Our exchange began, however, we got lost in the exchange trying to understand how to replay the message we sent to each other to make the exchange happen. So it began with poetry, screenshots, images, videos, personal observations from our daily lives. We also got lost in our daily lives, time, and the urgent deadlines demanding our urgent attention. However, we did not give up so easily. We reconvened and spoke about it and tried to narrow down our attempts. And we thought, well, there is a certain strand here from what we find familiar, a certain loss and searching and questioning of our identity. So we began again thinking about how to apply the digital. And we thought more and thinking through what would become our transformative elements to help us guide us into that manifestation of ideas and knowledge in a form that combines excellence in some or all aspects, wrestling with weakness and questions in other aspects, heroic in outlook and actions, yet tied up with emotions and desires. And we said, what about making our own avatars in the form of a filter and a GIF? Dalia and I decided that by speaking through our collaboration and our interests and through the internet, this would be how we would make this collaboration happen. And so we've come up with a couple of experiments of this avatar in the form of filters, a GIF, and a video. So now we will show you all our experiments of what we've done over this course of this collaboration.
I'm going to share, so first, a GIF that Louise made out of this exchange. So, and from the same material, I was making Instagram filter and combined it with what Louise sent me. This is Louise trying the Instagram filter that I made. And this is me trying the Instagram filter that I made.
And so we made quite a few versions of this through this collaboration. And we've also then decided to do the final version and send it to you all to see how it works as a filter. So that's basically the link that we've sent you all. And that's basically it.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Louise and Dalia. The link to the public have access to this Instagram filter that both of you created will be available in the description box of this video. So this way everyone can try and create a new experience at home. Now, the last presentation for today with Anja and Jacqueline in collaboration with Sophia. Please go ahead when you are ready.
Hello, my name is Anja Bojovic, and I have collaborated with Jacqueline and Sophia on this project. I'm a visual artist, grew up in Poland, I'm based in London, and I work mainly with within the idea of sculpture, but with sculpture objects, landscapes, videos, instructions, and frequently participatory project, looking at working bodies, working gestures as a kind of sculptural proposition, but also idea of kind of metaphoric resonances and something that can be explored with other collaborators and public.
All right, I'll take over. My name is Jacqueline van de Geer. I'm Dutch. I immigrated in 2005 to Canada, to Montreal. I have 2 bachelors, one in visual arts, one in theater and performance. And my work nowadays is performance, and I'm also exploring with photography and a little bit with video lately. And my work has become very, very interactive. I have a series of performances that I call You Are the Performance. And in these series, I ideally initiate the performance, and then I see if there is a way that the audience, which I rather call my participants, can take over that performance. And one time I could even sneak out of the performance and the people were still busy with their actions. So that is actually my dream to initiate that more often. And I'm thrilled to be here with Anja, but I'm also in the group with Sophia. So Sophia, take it away.
I'm Sophia. I'm a filmmaker. I'm based in Lisbon. I'm Portuguese. I've studied in London and I've been in Berlin working. I work with image and the body, and I work also with performance. And lately, I'm exploring the world of soundscapes, and I'm very glad to work with Anja and Jacqueline to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so let me just present kind of the trajectory of the project. I will share the screen with you now. So when I met with Jacqueline, I think for both of us, because Sophia joined us at a later stage, for both of us, the first meeting was a conversation of looking at points of connection. I'm based in London, Jacqueline in Montreal. You know, both females. And the conversation kind of traversed a lot of points. And at a certain point of time, we kind of zoomed in on this idea of gesture and as a kind of threshold on Zoom, and how you know, what we were discussing is like the range of movements on Zoom is kind of very much muted, and generally the digital world mutes the range of our gestural movements, and the materiality is becoming increasingly digital. But you know, kind of movement of the body is very important because it's a way of kind of mirroring an empathetic connection with others, creating kind of creating and expanding our consciousness to a certain extent, but also creating a certain form of wellness and certain part of imagination. So we became interested in how we can reclaim this sort of gesture in Zoom, how it can become more excessive and inappropriate, and what is it, you know, large and small, and all those things that are kind of generally in everyday life swallowed and silenced. And can we kind of reconnect through Zoom, but differently? And we started talking a lot about different forms of gestures, because obviously of my research into the working gestures, you know, I kind of started throwing quite a lot of material at Jacqueline, and I was very excited to see that she started working with the hysterical, the notion of hysterics, and I was quite interested in this image of kind of choreography of historical subjects through the kind of historical motions, and especially in the archives from Parisian Salpêtrière Hospital. And this is a quote from Laurie Anderson from Dance of Electricity. An involuntary dance, it's the dance you do when one of your fingers get wedged in a live socket and your arms start pumping up and down, and your mouth is slowly opening and closing, and you can feel the power, but no words will come out. So it's the seizures, the attacks, the ecstatic states. And you can see some of the collections from La Salpêtrière. And this is Mary Wigwam performing the Dance of Suffering. And I think that's kind of inspired both of us. So we basically played. We played with this material, and Jacqueline led the first kind of performance. It was one-on-one. She was performing, I was mimicking. It became quite an private but also very exciting space. And then we started thinking about things like how, you know, how we can connect, how we can expand other people. We played with the backgrounds and with the soundscaping. And I was also kind of thinking about the other gestures, the gestures of kind of self-healing, of Reiki, of kind of hand movements, of mudras, the over-the-top Baroque elocution gestures, but then conducting and especially the performing gestures for the crane operators that, you know, actually, if they get them wrong, could be potentially very, very dangerous. But most exciting for me became the gestures, the political aspect of the body, and the gesture of the politicians and the gestures of the Protestants. protesters, and how it can be used for the communication of when the vocally we have been silenced. How it can become a unifying, so sort of a new way of unifying, not just mimicking, but also unifying through performing the same meaning. And at that point of time, we were very fortunate to have Sophia join us. And this is suddenly in the project, what I've discovered for myself is it really did change the dynamic. Sophia's with her performative background and working with dancers and sound and film, it kind of became like three powerful women. So we played a little bit with the material of the political bodies, but then let me just come out of this. Then Sophia led us through quite a fantastic short exercise with her own soundscape and provided background. So I'm going just to leave this screen share, and I'm going to share a video with yourself.
Talking about intimate sharing, it's really nice.
No, I'm coming. Because when the sex is good, the sex is seductive, and then sometimes the person is not really treating you well. You know what?
That's exactly what
Sex is magnetic. I had a person like that last.
So now let me hand over to Jacqueline, because she has got something very, very special prepared for us.
Well, I would say I can only do it with you. So basically, I would like to spend just a minute or two with you all. So if you could all be visible again and place yourself in front of this crazy computer screen. I would totally love to basically do a little game. It's a mirroring game. And for a minute, maybe a minute and a half or 2 minute max, I am going to guide you through some movements. And it's not very prepared, but I'm going to guide it anyways. So, and I'm very happy that I see everybody. Nobody is behind this kind of. This is the first letter of my name and the first letter of my family name. So that's good. So thumbs up. Are you ready? All right, let's go. Thank you. That was marvelous. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope it was fun.
Thank you so much, Anja, Jacqueline, and Sophia. So we end here with this wonderful group exercise. Thank you again all so much for being here, and bye.
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 Bye.